Okay, I'm going to move around a bit because I can't really see what I'm presenting. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me, and thank you for TCAT and everybody who's got together to bring us here. It's really important that we say thank you to those who help us get here. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do in San Francisco, and I've been really impressed by what I've seen and heard already about Toronto, and then also with Vancouver and the other cities from the breakout sessions. We're all trying to do the same things in different ways for what makes sense for our cities. And I really just want to walk you through a little bit of what we've done in San Francisco and the challenges that we face, because it's so easy to come up here and show you some amazing PowerPoint slides of really cool stuff, but the blood, sweat, and tears that's gone behind that and the daily grind that we go through as transportation planners, engineers, and policymakers and advocates really needs to be understood, because it's a lot of hard work. Why do we do this? Because we love our cities. We just love them. So maybe we're just glutton for punishment, but we love this stuff. Here's just some context for you guys who are not very familiar with the West Coast. So California's on the West Coast of the US. It really is its own country. That's how we like to think of it. It's a people's republic. We have the Bay Area in the north, which is the high-tech innovation zone. We have the Southern California at the south, which is the entertainment zone. And we kind of like to think of ourselves as, the People's Republic of California. Up in the Bay Area, the peninsula is really interesting because San Francisco, if you put your hand like this, the nail is San Francisco, the rest of the fingers is the Bay Area. And we have we're only about 120 square kilometers, so not a very big municipality, but we're part of a region that has 8 million people, and we have about 800,000 people. So a lot of things there. The interesting thing is, as well, we're only 10% of the region population, we're 55% of the transit trips. Imagine how many walking trips and probably almost half of all the bike trips as well. So most of the action is happening in San Francisco. That red blob that you're seeing on the side of the city is our regional priority development area. That is the area where the city has actually worked with the regional government, who is very strong, and said to us, this is where we're going to, this is how many jobs you're going to have, and this is how much housing you're going to have. And we had this negotiation, arm wrestle for about 3 years, and we concede and say, okay, we'll grow in these areas because this is where most of the redevelopment area is possible, and the areas outside of that are where all the NIMBYs are saying, don't you dare touch my area. So that's how we do regional growth planning in California. There's a bit of a delay here. Okay. Now, here is the difference between us and everybody else in the US. We are a all-in-one agency, but we were formed by these three things. And you need these three things to get anything done in your city. If you don't have engaged citizens on the left, pressuring the politicians to the right, and getting some staff leadership from the bureaucracy, things just don't get done, and we get stuck in this thing. And how many people experience that things just don't get stuck because you have one out of those three or two out of the three. You need three out of the three all the time, and then you have a very small window because one of those three falls out, and then you can't get those projects built. So we had that. We had a situation in the early 90s where we had 7 different departments, everybody hated each other, the planners hated the engineers hated the transit operators. This is a familiar story, just went on and on and on. The elected officials blamed each other, they blamed their own boards, everyone's pointing the finger, and the citizens said, enough, we're done, we just can't take this anymore, nothing's happening. So they did what we can do in California. We can hold our politicians' feet to the fire and put a ballot initiative, and said they want one transportation agency to focus on everything from point A to point B and in between, and that they're going to be moved a little bit away from the political process. And we can't completely remove them from the process, but just a little bit. And that's what created the MTA. So a few years later, there was a shotgun marriage between the transit agency and the traffic department and the parking department, and then the taxi commission, and then the street enforcement, the traffic detail of the police department. A huge coup, because the traffic enforcement part of the police department is actually under the MTA's jurisdiction. Ongoing relationship with the police department because cooperation is key. But people didn't know who we really were, so we had to create a new identity, a new vision, and we came up with this challenge of engaging the people, San Francisco style, which was really about getting them to tell us, what should we look like, who should we be, what do we do? And it was a good way to get the word out because messaging is really important when you're going to do these big changes in the street. So go ahead and play it. the oldest publicly owned transportation agency in the country. SFPB free, la 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 la, all sorts of stuff. But you know, we're beyond transit was our message, you know. So the whole multimodal piece, that we are one agency now, and we ask you to help us create the MTA of the future. So we really engage social media and say, you know, what can we do to get people to get engaged, and they can vote or comment or give their feedback, using crowdsourcing, all these different things to figure out what was going on. And then try to create a fun way to get people to understand how they can get their message across throughout our real estate, because we have a lot of real estate service for our new logo, messages, etc., co-branding, all these different things. So that was really successful, and it's part of our city's initiative to move this forward. And we can go back to the PowerPoint. What we did is we ended up with this new logo. So the new logo really just encapsulates our multimodal effort that we have. And it's kind of, there it is. Whoa, let's go back. So that was our new logo. And then it really just to enforce the fact that, you know, these are the modes that we care about. Not one mode, not two modes, not three modes, but all the modes. All the modes are important, all the modes are important, all the modes are important. And it's really important to say it again, all the modes are important. Because our system is interconnected, it's organic, it's interconnected. We can't focus on one over the other, and if we pull from one or push from the other one, we affect all the other ones together. So that was a really important message to everybody, that there's a very different way of doing things in the city. It's been an integration evolution, because while that was really cool for all the policymakers, staff had to get sold on the message as well, and we developed a new strategic plan to really get them to think about what their role is. And we had to have this whole, you know, kumbaya session of, you know, get together and say, you know, you're a planner, you're an engineer, we're plangineers now. So we're plangineers. You're an advocate, I'm a bureaucrat. You're an advocate, you're an advocate, I'm a bureaucrat, we're advocrats, right? So let's work together, let's do things together. So 2 new words, plangineers, advocrats. And then our partnerships, you know, San Francisco has so many people that we've got to be with. We have over-inclusion, in my opinion, but that's just how it is. You know, got to meet with everybody, talk about everything, that's why things take so long. But getting clever with those partnerships means that we can do things. It's always better to redesign something on paper than it is actually on the street. And then really testing things out, data is really important. So we really made the case to our politicians and to our public and to our staff, because a lot of the staff were skeptical about a lot of these things, saying that, you know, this is the vicious cycle of fragmented transportation investment, focusing just on transit, just more bikes, just more ped safety, just this, just that. But it's all fragmented, which means in the end, more people are getting hit by cars, because that's our ultimate indicator. How many people are getting severely or fatally injured, or how many people are using transit, walking and bicycling versus driving? What are your key indicators, and how do you measure them? And then we talked about this cascading effect of this different cycle, that what we want is a virtuous cycle of investments for complete streets. And that means that when we invest in demand management at the top, we're going to create the demand for more of these shared vehicle systems. Car sharing, bike sharing. Car sharing is critical to this whole process. But transit and transport agencies don't even know what car sharing is. So we have to really get that out. And then if you have more bicycle facilities, it's actually easier for those short peak period transit trips to become bicycle trips, because they're the most expensive to operate as a transit operator. You don't want to provide very short peak period transit trips, which is very expensive. And then if everybody's walking, bicycling, and taking more transit, more walking means more frequenting of stores and little ones. So there's your just in a nutshell. I've explained 500 pages of analysis in about 20 seconds. So it's really important to talk about it that way. And then, you know, the data behind the data is doing a multi-modal cost-benefit analysis, because cost-benefit analysis always look about 1 or 2 things, but when you look at everything that you can, and it's always very good to have academia because they can do it cheap and quick, staff take a long time to do these things because we have to actually do stuff. So we have to put things in the ground. We actually have to do things. We don't have time to do the thinking. We know it's the best thing to do, but we've got to get someone to prove it for us. So we say, academia, hey, help us do this. So no, it's a really good partnership with the academia in that they look at emissions and costs and benefits. And when you invest in walking, bicycle, and transit, you get these incredible public health and economic development benefits for relatively low public cost. And what's important to show here is that while we spend $1 billion of public money every year, our community is spending $4 billion of their private money to run their cars. So our actual transportation budget is really this is for San Francisco, is really $5 billion a year. So if we can halve that for them, we've actually saved people a lot of money, and that's really important because one of our key goals is affordability. Social equity and sustainability for transportation means low transportation costs. It may mean you have to shift resources over to the public sector so that you can actually provide more of these services. So that's the kind of things we're trying to get people to think about at the high level when we talk about these things. Also, it's really important to have a diversified revenue base. We have multiple revenue sources because we're a conglomeration of agencies put together. We own all the surface parking lots, and all the on-street car meters are owned by the MTA. So we get a lot of parking revenue, and that pays for a lot of our transit service. There's a direct correlation there. We call it a market correction. We go from parking revenue to pay for transit service. Now, if we didn't have that, we would have cut back transit a lot harder during the big recession a few years ago. Also, we have property taxes. We have property taxes dedicated from the general fund to fund our transportation system. And then transit fares are already 28%. We can't fit any more people into our system. We have the most overcrowded transit system for our size in the country. So there really isn't any much more capacity. And then advertising and everything else is what pays for the rest. But we really need to think about that as we move forward, how else we can diversify our system. And then on our integration side for our revenue, for our capital expenditures, now we know how much if you were to just buy the San Francisco transportation system today, this is how much you need: $24 billion. So anybody who has a $24 billion check, you can buy our whole system brand new. But that was important to show that 83% of our infrastructure costs are the transit system. So it's no point talking about this and that if you're not going to really focus on where the core transportation needs are. So we have a strategy which is basically two tiers. The first tier at the top is actually a flip of what most agencies talk about. Most agencies have a model where they predict and they provide, and then they go on and on and on. We've done it the other way around. We're saying we're going to manage demand first. Let's get the most out of everything that we have because we can't afford to just keep expanding. There's not enough room. And then where we have to, we're going to strategically prioritize transit, walking, bicycling, and grow car sharing. So that's the key pieces there for our system. And we worked very close to the planning department, and it was great to see the planning director before come and talk about this when Jen was talking about how are you going to grow with your city. We basically, because of the regional planning effort that we have, we work very close with the city planning department to say, where is the best place to do all of our growth-focused effort planning. And with 15% more people and 25% more jobs coming into the city, we have to be very clever about where we're going to put that. So most of it's in where the existing transit corridors are. But what it does, it creates a huge impact on our transport network, and we've been working very closely with them to say, hold off on these 3 50-story buildings in this location because they're going to need to pay for an extra 2 buses. They're going to pay a percentage into a new storage facility. We need to have about X number more parking spaces for bicycles, and the list goes on and on and on. And there's a fine balancing point there where the developer's not willing to put in too much, but they know if they don't put in anything, they're not going to get the development approved because we have review authority, and while we don't actually approve development, we make a really loud noise when we don't get what we want. So it's very important for, even though you're not in charge of the land use, get involved as quickly as possible. So looking at our travel markets, we have our existing travel markets in the downtown center core, in the northeast corner, but we have these new corridors that are popping up because of all the new development happening all over the city, and there's physically no way to fill this up with cars. We just can't put any more cars on our streets. So we had to do something very similar to Vancouver and say, this is it. It's going to grow We can't stop the growth. We don't want to stop the growth because if it doesn't happen in San Francisco, it's going to happen out in the fringes where all of our fertile land is, Napa Valley, the wines, the cheese, all sorts of stuff. Don't want it there, let's bring it over here. But it's going to need infrastructure improvements. And then, so what we've developed is this draft document where we basically captured all of that growth in the city and then looked at that growth and said, what's that growth going to develop in terms of trips? What kind of trip outcomes do we want? We don't want auto trips, so if we're going to have bike trips and walking trips, we're going to need to charge every developer a per square footage fee to pay for those infrastructure costs, or at least pay a proportion of those costs, because they're not exactly equal. So some developments are going to pay more per square foot because they generate more trips, some less. And we also had to make the policy call as well that even though affordable housing creates the most transit trips, because most people who have affordable housing don't have cars, and it will affect our peak period capacity, from a social equity perspective, we just didn't feel that we would need to charge the public housing. It's hard enough to get public housing built, let alone charge them a fee on top of that. So it just didn't make sense. So everybody else pays more, sorry, it's just how it is. And then residential for the first time, charging every residential unit a per square footage fee. So this is going through its process, a lot of backwards and forwards, but we'll see how it goes. But it's our first attempt to really do value capture for the entire city for the next 25 years and say, this is the cost. And then things that we don't talk about very loudly, but this audience will appreciate, looking at our car growth trends, our automobile car ownership trends from a global perspective, and saying, what do we want to achieve from that? So we have a 1 to 2% growth per year. It's got a little flat now the last 2 years, but we need to cut it down by about 25% for us to reach our goals that we want to do. And people at the end of the day want auto mobility. They don't actually need to own and operate a car. And the youngest... our youngest cohort and our senior cohort say that again and again. We don't need to own a car, we don't want to own a car, but we like to use a car, and car sharing is the best way to do that. So also on the demand management side, parking. Parking is a huge tool because parking determines whether you are going to take the trip by car or not. The decision is, do I have a spot to park it now, do I have a spot to park it where I want to go? If I do, I'm going to drive, we shouldn't be surprised. If you manage that parking by having this demand management program, you can actually help people get to the car parking spot quicker, which means they free up time for transit, congestion, and auto and pedestrian and bicycle collisions. Many people get frustrated because they're looking for a parking spot and they end up accidentally hitting a pedestrian, or they end up holding up transit. And because that's important to us, we want to get people to the car parking spot as quickly as possible. So this app basically shows you where it's red, it's going to be more expensive. Where it's blue, it's cheaper. So if you park 2 blocks over, you'll get a parking spot guaranteed in 5 minutes, and then you can go on with your day. Also with the taxi, with the app itself, we're working with information to really look at how do we get people more information they get in their hands quicker. So, because we've got 2 billion app developers in San Francisco, we're not going to do this ourselves. We're just going to say we're going to make sure our data is clean. So the data that you collect has to be very, very good quality so that it can be reliable. So that if you say, I'm here, I want to go there, you're going to get all the options up front, and then you can make an informed decision. If it's a nice day like today, you might want to go bike sharing, or if it's if you're in a rush, you'll take the subway, or if you've got things in your hand, you'll take a taxi or car sharing. But the point is, giving people the options up front will actually help them determine what they want to do. And if you want to be like eco-greedy, you can calculate your GHGs, you can do all these things that you want to do. And then on our helping our board understand where we are today and where we want to go in 2018 is really important, because we have a 6-year strategic plan. And right now, back in 2010, we were a little under 2/3 of all trips by car, and the rest by walking, biking, and transit, which is pretty high for a US city. That's not really the normal proportion. But our board said that's not good enough. We want to go to 50-50 by 2018, and if you can get there sooner, even better. We just did our latest survey, our statistically significant survey in 2012, and we're about 51-49, but we're not going to publish it yet because I need to look at it a little deeper. And I was just shocked by it. So something's happening, and it's actually happening faster than we think. People are just deciding to change modes faster. But the whole point of this one was to show that our board that the fastest growth percentage is really from bicycling, because it's actually at 3.5% now. And because our transit's so crowded, 6 years is not enough time to really improve transit capacity, so we're going to focus more on improving bicycle capacity. And it was important to show them like what's it going to take so our board can see what it's going to take. And this really just shows you that for us to get to where we are today, which is 4.2 million trips, we need to shift half of those over to walking, bicycling, transit. And for bicycling, that was a huge change from 147,000 trips today to over 380,000 in the next 6 years. So advocates, we said, that's your homework. Help us get to that. So now they've got a clear goal. How are you doing every year as an advocate? Are you getting us close to this number? We're doing every weekend to get the infrastructure in the ground, but are you getting the people on getting their butts on those bikes and getting them around the city? So it's a dual partnership there. And then our infrastructure plans, basically all the modes together, go into our capital plans so we can see where is the money going. You should always follow the money. The policies can say these lovely things over here, but where's the money going? Where's the money actually spending going? And that's where we're tying those two things together. And then so we developed a capital program which is basically about complete streets. So every single category in our funding program ties to this streetscape so that we can see where things go. And then walking through each modal strategy, reducing vehicle speed is our #1 issue for our street system. We can put up signs everywhere, but if you can drive 45 miles an hour, you're going to go 45 miles an hour. If the design of the street allows you to go 45 miles per hour, people will go 45 miles per hour. So we're designing the streets to not reach those speeds so we can get better. And then, looking at these statistics here, multiplied by 4 for children and for seniors. So seniors and children are the most vulnerable if they get hit by a car. And so what we developed a pedestrian strategy, which after our mayor put a reduction goal there, we identified 70 kilometers of high priority streets. So these streets we know now we're going to focus our resources on so we can improve walking to get to that 50% reduction based on all these best practices. And then here's a toolkit for the public so they can see what do we mean by when we say complete streets, pedestrian safety for complete streets. Here are all the tools visually so that people can see in the community what's happening in my community, which one of these am I going to get, and then most importantly, how much these things cost. So you can say you want these things, but where are we going to get the money from? Help us get that money so we can get there. And then pedestrian countdown signals, 22% reduction in collisions. As soon as we put those in, we've got them now at 1,000 intersections. And then temporary things we can't afford to do, like sidewalk widening up front, our parklet program, our plaza program, just reappropriating space. The one on the left was donated to us by Audi. We had a car company pay for it. Hey, we'll take money from anybody. It's like, let's put this stuff out, let's get it out there quick. They wanted to show that they were sustainable, so we were really perplexed by it, but we took their money and we designed this street. But it's all very Audi, aluminum everywhere, so people can see that and feel that it's an Audi experience. So they're very clever, they know what they're doing. And I keep saying Audi everywhere I go, so I'm advertising for them. On our transit network, it was really just focusing on our transit core network. So the blue is really where the majority of the trips are. And then the black is the congestion points. And then looking at things that we can focus on, the red lines being our high priority corridors, and the green is everything else. And we're not sure we're going to focus on those much more, but we're still going to keep the service, but we're really going to focus on these blue and red lines because that's where the majority of people are going, getting more of our system, being smarter about it. And then the vision is these hubs, these white circles that we'll have as multi-modal sharing hubs with bikes and car sharing connected to them. And here are some 3 major streetscape projects. So these things take a lot of money, a lot of time, they're really important, but they take years and years and years, and politicians get really bored of them very quickly, but they are important, and we're working on them. But each of these corridors really has a prioritized mode. It's very difficult to fit everything all at once, so certain corridors get certain modal priority. That's just how the city of street grid works. And then here are some spot improvements that really help at the neighborhood level. This intersection basically had an 80 centimeter platform for transit, and then bicycles and cars going through. It was a real mess. And then when we streeted it, we basically took out the travel lanes, widened the platforms, and put in dedicated bike lanes. And then as we upgraded it, it becomes a really good neighborhood investment. So it really helps prioritize walking, bicycling, and transit first. And then dedicating transit lanes as well, helping the transit services. Here we have trolley buses and light rail vehicles using the same lane, and it was being violated by people driving all the time. So just putting in a different color treatment to see, does this work? What are the most cost-effective ways to get things to work really quickly? And then you can see how it works through these intersections. Works sometimes it doesn't. We just have to see. Also, all-door boarding, we just changed our policy to let everybody get on anywhere, anytime, so we can get people on and off really quickly. Just a really quick way to show people we're listening and we understand. It also helps our transit operations as well. So really good win-win there. And then these partnerships, really looking at car sharing, taxis, scooter sharing just started in San Francisco, and bike sharing starting later on this year. And these shuttle buses ferry people from San Francisco down to Silicon Valley. 30,000 people a day going to Silicon Valley every day. They would be driving if they didn't have this option, because the regional transit doesn't get them to those jobs. And in a survey that we did, which is really good backup data, they said that the reason why they chose to move to San Francisco is because this service was being provided by their employer. They would have actually ended up staying down in Silicon Valley, and they don't want to live down there because it's boring. They like to live in San Francisco where it's cool. So we're like, great, let's do it. On the bike, where we've had the least amount of data analysis, we really reassessed our bicycle network and found that some things had happened over the last 10 years that were really interesting. So we had about a 1.5% citywide average mode share, but there was a core that was about 3% about 2000. And then in 2010, that core grew to 7%. So we're really starting to think differently about our bicycle network, just like our transit network, and saying, where is the core network, where is the core focus area? And we found that there were several neighborhoods that were over 10% mode share at that scale. So when you have a large metropolitan analysis, you're forgetting where the major core areas are for bicycling. It's actually quite contained. And then we actually looked at what was happening in certain neighborhoods, major increases in bicycling. So there was a demographic, a land use, economic, there's all these different things that are happening that were consistent with these neighborhoods that was different from everywhere else. So that helped us understand what we would likely see in the future if we did more of the same. We also looked at our land uses and found out which commercial areas and which merchant areas had the most propensity to actually see most of this growth. And it was a very similar situation happening along all those areas and very different everywhere else. So it's kind of making us see what was going on and how we could actually see the growth potential. And in this area that's surrounded by black, we will probably see a mode share of 20% by 2020 because of all the things that are happening in this area, versus everywhere else will probably stay the same. And that's an important differentiation to make when you're doing your bicycle analysis. So what we looked at is these blue corridors are really where most of the people are bicycling, just like our transit network, only along major corridors, only along these major spines. So that's where we want to focus most of our resources because they need to be fixed up first. And then bicycle crashes. Everywhere in the dark green or yellow areas you had a fender bender, in the orange areas there was a serious injury or fatality. So again, the core area is okay, the suburban areas are in trouble. And then we found our core bicycle areas where we have the highest mode share change opportunity is in this blue area, which was really important for us to focus our resources and then focus those land use changes. And then for the long-term people who love long-term plans that frankly don't really go very far, this is the entire thing, filling all the gaps and the dots and stuff, but it was an exercise. We're really focusing on something else, which is the core corridors. And so we developed this level of traffic stress, the really first level of traffic stress for cyclists. What does it feel as a cyclist to travel down certain streets with certain facilities? The LTS1 is for children. If you feel safe for your child to go down these corridors, they're the best ways to get around the city. And then so on and so on to the bottom, which is the red, which is the fearless group, the spandex wearing, we call them pixies, fixies, the ones who just will ride no matter what. And we did an assessment along all of our corridors to see what did this actually look like for the experience of the cyclist, because on the map, our bike network looks very extensive. But this is what it looks like when you're looking from a level of traffic stress. So the black areas are where most people would feel comfortable riding their bicycle, 3% of our network. The grey areas is where about 7% or 8% of our population would feel comfortable bicycling. And then the pink and the red is where everybody else feels uncomfortable. And in particular, the red areas is where only the fearless will go. And it's a really important distinction to show that your network is fragmented. And imagine a fragmented transit network or a fragmented freeway network, it just doesn't work. So our job is to make it contiguous and upgrade those levels of traffic comfort. So we talked to our board and said we could do it two ways. We could just focus on getting rid of all the red, or really focus closing all the gaps on the primary network. And they said focus on the primary network because we want to build this up over time and then get everybody else upgraded as we can. So this is what it looks like. So from the west coast of our city to the east, we have these differentiating levels of traffic stress based on those conditions, those methodology analysis that we've done. And this is the busiest bike corridor, so we're missing out on a lot of market of users because they can't get through those two red hotspots, and they will not go east of 9th Street because it becomes too unbearable east of 8th Street. So we've missed out on a whole slew of opportunity there because we've just been not very clever on how we do our facilities. So we're looking at these things right now. So on that hotspot there, this is what it was like. You have to cross a streetcar track, get in a left-hand pocket, cross over streetcar tracks, get another right-hand pocket to cross the busiest junction of our bike network. I mean, we wonder why no one other than 18 to 35-year-olds are riding through this corridor. So that was what it was graded for before, and then we developed this left-turn pocket system, and then we saw a huge change, not only in how people were using it, but the demographics that were starting to use it, just from fixing that pinch point. And then here's what it looks like. So if you keep going down Market Street, you just stay on the left. If you're going to go make a left, you hang at that pocket there, and then you get the light, and then off you go, and then you're back onto that really good network further down Valencia Street. Same thing with the Panhandle in the park. Before a horrible street in the middle of a park, why we have roads in the middle of parks, I don't understand, but we do. Major connector corridor. This is what happened when we did a cycle track because we didn't do the outreach and we didn't do the symbols on the street very well. And then we re-looked at it again, and then that's what happened the day after we put in the signs and did the outreach. Everybody thought it was going to do because this is what came out. This was basically what we're handing out to people. So this is where you park, this is where you load, this is where you bike, this is where you walk. Why would simple, right? But interesting enough for us, we still haven't thought of these things. So understanding the message and what you're supposed to do is really important because that actually helps you understand what is going on with your system, and when you do, just design is not enough, you actually have to message it and get it out to the public as well. And then lastly, really helping our staff, like empowering your staff. These staff get bottles of champagne, bottles of beer, they get hugs from people on the street because they're out there doing the things that people want to see happen. So really giving them the motivation to go out there because for all they care, they're just putting down paint. But when people come to them and thank them and congratulate them, it's a huge boost for morale. It doesn't cost you anything. So really encourage them to do more. Also, we just installed our first bicycle barometer a few months ago, and they were so proud to put that in because they knew what it was about. They loved the idea of counting bicycles, and their kids ride bikes, so it was really cool. Now they're riding bikes because they want to count themselves as they're going by the bike barometer. So it's really good to engage the staff as well, not just everybody else. And then looking at the target market, if you got your bike culture going, that's just not enough. You don't have enough people. You've got to go beyond this bike culture of the people. It's going to be everybody else. If you have your 5%, then you're not there. You need to keep going. So what do you need to do? Partner with businesses. Market bicycling as cool, as fun, as hip, as sexy, all those things, right? Really market business. And then really look at partnering with transit, better design. There's our mayor on the left who goes on bike rides with us all the time, really getting all of our elected officials. 15 years ago, if you actually went on a platform of complete streets, you would have been laughed out of the room. Now, there's no way any of the elected officials will not have a platform of complete streets because they'll be laughed out of the room. So it's a huge change just in 15 years. Also, working with transit to make it easier, looking at ways to get more people and making it safer for kids. Looking at transit connections, so getting more access on the system, more parking, different types of opportunities for different needs. So work with manufacturers. That the two-wheel bicycle without the chain guard ain't working anymore, guys. We've got to do something different. And then wayfinding signage. You know, these signs went up for America's Cup, which was an opportunity for a big match that we had with the yachting race. These wayfinding signs on the left-hand side tell you that it's 15 minutes to downtown all day, every day. That's a big change from 2 miles or 6. People don't understand those things. It's like 15 minutes every day. And transit takes forever, so they can get out there. Just some more ideas there, festivals, working with advertisers, and then basically, you know, Old Navy now talks about come by bicycle, you know, all these different things are going on. This bike will suit you, you know, all this cool stuff. And then education, and then lastly data, putting data in the ground so we can count things. We have retimed our lights so you can go through green lights. I know cyclists hate stopping at lights, but you have to, so we'll make them green so you can go through. And then this Cycle Trap app just tells us where people are going so we can get better information. And I will stop there and say that it's really about people. This is our Sunday Streets program. These are our future advocates. These are our future taxpayers. These are our ongoing and current taxpayers. And it's about having fun and enjoying the streets. So have fun and enjoy the streets. Thank you very much.